So I want to mention too that remember Solomon said that knowledge, the more knowledge he's gained, the more sorrow he has. The more sorrow he just brings more sorrow. The more knowledge he accumulates, the more sorrow he has. The more knowledge he has, the more he's sorrowful. So remember the fourth quadrant. The fourth quadrant, it's always seen as bad. It's portrayed as negative, but also knowledge frees you from illusion, from the illusion. Knowledge is death, but it ultimately people look at it as bad, but it is important. One thing I want to talk about knowledge is the shaman cultures, the shamanistic cultures. They would have these throughout the world, and it's been documented throughout the world. There's these, and it's the same documentation. The same thing occurs. Is there would be these shamans that would go into these ritual dances where they would get into the zone, they'd get into the flow, they'd start losing track of their bodies. They describe this, and then they say that they would become dismembered and they would die. And then they say that when they die, they gain knowledge of the spirit world, which would be like being of the true reality. They break out of this world and they enter the eternal world. So what would happen is these shamans, and even today shamans do this, and it's been tested in laboratories too, and it's shown that this is legitimate stuff. They say that they break out of their bodies. They say that they die, they become dismembered, they achieve a death, and then they gain knowledge, and then they come back and they try to tell the people about this knowledge that they gained in the higher reality. Back in the day, they would draw cave paintings trying to depict what they saw. Well, one painting that led, scientists found a while ago a painting on a wall where there was a man who was falling and his legs were crossed as he was falling. So you have the crossed legs. It looked kind of like this, a man like this, and then his legs were crossed like this, and here's his body, and he was falling, and he had animal, an animal head too. So sometimes the shamans say that they become one with the animals and everything when this occurs too. Stuff like that. I'm not an expert on it, but so if I say something wrong, but yeah, this is what happens. So they would fall and they would achieve what they call this death. They gain knowledge, and they'd come back, and they would try to depict this knowledge or tell the people about the knowledge that they gained. And they would also write on these walls. So one thing that they would write on the walls is they would draw quadrants, and they said that this is what they saw in this realm. And there's been laboratory tests, and people throughout the world, when they get in these trances, that they say it's kind of like a death. Remember, knowledge. They see these quadrants. And they say that they're in the higher realm. So once again, we have the quadrant model. They see other geometric figures, but this is one of the main ones that they see. Another thing I want to say is when people think, it's described that, like I said, parts of the areas of the brain light up, so it's kind of physical. Same thing with emotions, but when people contemplate and when they are in the zone, this has been studied. It's shown that the brain is more synchronous, the action potentials, and there's actually even less activity in the brain. So it's almost like there's a kind of death to the ego, to the body. So remember I said that dreaming, when you dream, your body you're disconnected from your body. Well, dreaming encompasses thinking, emotion, and doing. When you dream, you do think, you do have emotions, you do, but also it indicates what comes after it, the transcendence of the ego, which is represented in contemplation, passion, flowing, and knowing. Another thing I want to say about passion, I might have said this already, but there's Professor Ramachandran describes that there is, at UCSD, he describes that there's mirror neurons in your brain that allow you to feel empathy for other people. So when you see someone suffering, the neurons in your brain that are responsible for suffering light up, and they make you suffer as well. So this is what is responsible for your compassion, he hypothesizes. So then we have knowledge, and then knowledge points to being. So knowing, the dual connotation is no thing. When there is no thing, there's just being. Remember, Moses says, or the burning bush, it says, God said that I am. And Scotus, a medieval philosopher, says that this is representative of God being just being. He is being itself. The 17th is always, it transcends the whole quadrant model. It is God. Kind of like there's the 16 particles in the standard model of particle physics, and the 17th is the Higgs boson, which is called the God particle. 17th is God. That which transcends the quadrants is God. I wanted to mention the Stanley Milgram experiment. So in this experiment, this guy, Stanley Milgram, he was a Jewish guy, and he tried to test why it was that the Nazis killed so many Jews in the Holocaust. And what he ended up doing was he would get people to come into the lab, and he would have them press a row of buttons, and one button would be 50 volts, another button 100 volts, another button more volts, and then he would see how he would tell the people, okay, press the next button, and he would see if they would stop or when they would stop. And then the last button would be, there would be there was an X sign indicating that the person would die, and he would see how many people would go all the way and actually kill the participant if he, an authority figure, told them to do it. And so he did this. He had the people press the buttons, and a lot of people ended up pushing the buttons all the way. So what he said was, this shows why the people in Germany, people call it the German people, but actually that there's no such thing as the German people. The German people was made up of a lot of different groups of people that were put together into a state called Germany that was kind of a newer construction. But I'm just going to say, to make it easier, the German people, why they killed so many Jews. People throughout the world killed a lot of Jews. The Russians, everybody did. But why was it that the German people killed the Jews in the Holocaust? And he said that if there's an authority figure like Hitler or somebody like this telling them to do it, then they obey commands. And he showed that if there was somebody that was not himself, like just another one of his graduate students telling them to do the experiment, to continue to push the buttons, they were less likely to go all the way. He said because the person had less authority. So once again, people tend to behave in order to belong, and if there's an authority figure telling them what to do, then they do it. But he found that women were more likely to go all the way and certain things like this. And remember, I said that women tend to be more first quadrant oriented, second quadrant oriented. So there may be a link between what people went all the way and what people didn't with personality. So that would be an interesting thing to test. And another thing that's interesting is in the Stanley Milgram experiment, he would say 4 things. The first thing he would say to the people, if they questioned him, he would say, I forget exactly what he said, but it would be something like, please continue. The next thing was, please, it's important you continue. The third thing would be, you must continue. And then the fourth thing would be, the third thing was something like, please, it is essential you continue. And then the fourth thing would be, you must go on. So he would say 4 things, and then after that, he would just recycle saying that to the person. And a lot of times, the person would go all the way and end up pressing the button that indicated that he had killed the person. So So basically I didn't explain it very well, but there was a person in the other room that was making noises whenever the person would press a button. So Stanley Milgram would tell the guy, okay, press the first button, and then the guy would press the button, and the guy in the other room would go, ow! And then Stanley would say, okay, press the button again. The guy would press the next button. The guy would press the button. The guy would go, ow, hey, stop. And then he would continue, and then finally the guy would stop making noises indicating that he was dead. And a lot of people would go all the way and press all the buttons because Milgram was telling them to continue. And I want to say the irony with Hitler is he tried to exterminate the Jews and kill the Jews, but it kind of like the Pharaoh when he tried to kill all the firstborn or kill the Jewish males. When he tried to kill the Jewish males in order to make it so the Israelites wouldn't be able to rebel against the Egyptians. Well, in this story, Moses ends up being washed up, and then he ends up bringing up Moses, and Moses ends up freeing the Jews from slavery, taking them out of Egypt. So what he tried to stop this from occurring, but he ended up making it happen. The same thing with Hitler. He tried to annihilate the Jews, stop them from getting to Israel. He wanted Israel. There's evidence that indicates this. And yeah, he wanted to just destroy all the Jews, but he ended up not succeeding. And after this, like I said, then the Jews had an excuse to more of an excuse. There was anti-Semitism before, or anti-Jewish sentiment before this. Where there was already Zionism before this, but then America and Britain and people were more backing the settlement of Jews in Israel. So Hitler ended up creating the opposite of what he wanted in this case. There's another example of this occurring with I think her name was Esther, but there's a story in the Bible where Esther is taken in by, I think it was a Babylonian king, and I'm just going to say his name was Xerxes, but I forget his name, but we're just going to say for the sake of this that his name was Xerxes, but I don't think it was, but let's just say his name was Xerxes, and he took her in, and he made her his wife. He ended up killing his first wife, I think, but he ended up making this woman his new wife, this Jewish woman, and he didn't know that she was Jewish, but she was his favorite wife. He really liked her a lot. And so once again, the Bible always depicts Jews as being superior. There's cases, or it's always, the Bible portrays Jews very highly. So he really loves this his Jewish wife. And then there's this guy Haman who wants to have all the Jews killed because Mordecai refuses to bow down to him. And Mordecai was a Jew, and Mordecai, I think, was related to Esther. So Haman's saying, hey, let's kill all the Jews. He's really upset with the Jews. And so he's going to do this, but then Esther tells her husband, hey, I'm Jewish, and this guy Haman, he wants to kill all the Jews. And I'm your favorite wife, and I want you to kill Haman. So then Haman's like, okay. And then he kills Haman, and he kills Haman's sons. So this is another theme in the Bible. And this is another story of the Bible. All right, hopefully continue more in a bit.